Hello everyone, so today we're going to be talking about a new deck here, Branded Zombies. Now, I've played pure combo zombies on the channel before, and like I said in the last videos, it's one of my favorite decks on the channel. However, with ban list changes, you know, like the banning of Crystron Haki Fibrax and all of the ramifications on that, our old zombies list was becoming rather defunct. And then we had the idea of combining it with Branded. Of course, Branded being the sole tier 1 deck at the moment of posting. Branded Despia is anyway. There's a lot of synergy between Branded and Zombies, of course. I know people have tried playing Eldritch Branded before and it's doing pretty well, but I'm not a fan of Eldritch, so we're going to keep it a little bit more pure. So in general, how does the deck work? So ideally what you're trying to do is you're trying to set up your Mirror Jade combo. So ideally you will have Mirror Jade as well as the ability to go into Chimera, as well as your Doom King Ballardrock. Now Doom King Ballardrock is 2 negates built into 1, so he can negate the activation of a zombie monster, and when a zombie monster's effect is activated, he can banish any monster on the field and in the graveyard. Now that doesn't sound too good until you combine it with Zombie World, which you have immediate access to in this deck. There's so many different ways of getting to it. Your Branded Fusion will basically enable, so the deck is built around 2 card combos, your Branded Fusion being one of your core cards. Either Branded Fusion or Unizombie are sort of where you will usually start your combos. They will be able to send a dark monster from your deck to your graveyard off of your Branded Fusion to summon your Lebellion like you would anything else. And Lebellion's discard becomes extremely useful in this deck. So basically you want to have Branded Fusion as well as the Necroworld Banshee or Glow Up Bloom or Zombie World or Ballardrock or any of these cards, 1-for-1, Terraforming, Foolish Burial. Branded Fusion plus any of those cards gives you the full combo because you basically just send the missing piece to the deck. All of these cards are basically here to either A, get your Banshee into the graveyard, which when it's in the graveyard or on your field can banish itself to get your Zombie World, so this is your searchable Zombie World basically. Or if you already have access to this in your hand, then the rest of your cards are going to, and your Branded Fusion even, are going to get you access to Ballardrock by sending it from deck to graveyard, and when it's in the graveyard and you have Zombie World, it resurrects itself every standby phase. So basically by the end of your first turn you will have 1 or 2 large fusion monsters on your field, either Mirror Jade as well as a set Branded in red to go into Guardian Chimera on the opposing turn, or potentially a Dragostapelia depending on the matchup. I've been using this card a lot more recently, but yes, you'll usually have 1 or 2 large fusion monsters on your board, and then you'll also have your Ballardrock coming to the field on the following turn. All of their monsters are now zombies, which automatically by itself hurts a lot of decks, so it does, it really does. But it basically forces all of your opponent's monsters in the field and in the graveyards to become zombies, so that means your Doom King Ballardrock has 2 interruptions in 1, and it's infinitely recurring. The biggest weakness of the deck is definitely something like Call by the Grave, but again, you can't be immune to everything. For that reason, you might want to play a second Ballardrock, but I don't have a second one, and I'm not crafting one because I don't think it's necessary. I would still only play 1. But yes, that's the idea behind the deck, and we're going to discuss the combos in more detail at the end like we always do, and a full deck profile card for card will be happening. I'll explain some of the prototypes and everything we were using. So if you like what you're seeing and you want to see anything more, feel free to subscribe. You know, it doesn't cost you anything, really does help me out. We're getting very close to that 1,000 subscriber goal here, so we can begin to actually get this channel really going. Everything sort of changes at that 1k mark, so if we could sort of if you could help me get to that mark, I'd really appreciate it. And if you have any suggestions for what you want to play in this deck, leave them down below. This is a fairly new deck even to me. I've just been playing around with it and testing it out. It looks fairly different now to when I started. Like I used to play 3 Glow Bloom and 3 Tragedy because they have amazing synergy with Unizombie and stuff, but I didn't think it was necessary. Things like that. Whatever you think would be better, or if I'm potentially missing any big combo pieces, you just let me know down below. I'll test them out and we'll maybe get back to it again in the future. But for now, let's get into game number 1. Alrighty, here we are getting into game number 1. Now we are going second, and this hand of course has an awful lot of Branded going on in it. Our opponent's going to go for the Floundery's Advent, which we tried to negate with our Ash Blossom, but we do get stopped by the Crossout Designator. Now that does of course reduce his opening hand size to 2 here. He is going to be able to search for a card, but he's going to grab the Rabina, meaning he doesn't have the field spell in his hand, which suits us perfectly. summons out the Rabina, which is going to trigger the effect of the Eaglin, which is currently banished. Rabina is going to basically search his deck for a card, and the Eaglin is going to add itself back to his hand. He's going to get the effect for an additional normal summon. I mean, again, you have all played against Flowhounderies if you're playing at any sort of decent level, and you all know that if you have a single effect fielder in your hand, if they don't have any Fervor Interruption, then you're probably going to be able to survive the turn. So we're able to negate the Eaglin using our Veiler there, which is good. So they're going to set a card and pass back to us, so we draw into 1 for 1, but we're going to go for Branded Opening here. Upon our activation, they go for Macrocosmos. That means any card that would be sent to the graveyard is instead banished. Now that would matter an awful lot to certain decks, but to this one we definitely have plays around it, so we're going to go Despian Tragedy and Alibur's effects here. Tragedy is going to grab another Alibur from our deck. At this stage we weren't playing Ad Libitum, otherwise we would have grabbed it. We're going to use Branded Fusion here, send 2 from the deck to the graveyard to summon out Lubellion the Searing Dragon. Lubellion the Searing Dragon then shuffles back into the deck by discarding 1 to fusion summon out Predaplant Dragostapelia. Dragostapelia is significantly more powerful than Mirror Jade in the Flowhounderies matchup because you can actively negate and stop future summons. So Dragostapelia is definitely the correct option against Flowhounderies in particular. So we're just going to clear out his field, and turn goes back to him. He's going to go Pot of Duality here off the top of the deck. He's going to reveal the top 3 cards, pick 1, add it to his hat. He's going to go for the Breeze, I believe its name is. Unexplored Winds, sorry. So Unexplored Winds going to shuffle the Barrier statue back into his deck to draw 1. Stree here would basically, I believe it would banish the effect fielder from our graveyard and allows him an additional normal summon. Eaglin and Rabina adding themselves back to the hand here, but unfortunately we have the Dragostapelia, which is going to completely negate his Stree and prevent him from doing any further summoning this turn. Again, Dragostapelia is a really powerful card in this matchup. It's very difficult for Flowhounderies to get past it, so yeah, they're going to be struggling here. And they're going to go in the battle phase, take out our Alibur, but again, who cares? In turn, pass back to us. Okay, so getting back into our turn here, we draw into Unizombie. Again, the zombie engine is a little bit weaker against the likes of Macrocosmos, but this is an example of why the branded part is so much stronger, because it gives you a way to overpower. So we're going to Branded Fusion out here into Titaniclad. We're going to take that out, 2000 damage, and then 37 to the face. So that didn't show off a lot about the zombies in particular, but it's a very... whenever you're playing against sort of stun banish decks, you know, Dimension Shifter, Macrocosmos, Dimensional Fissure, Banisher Radiance sometimes comes up, but if you're playing against these big sort of banishing decks that sort of restrict your ability to use your graveyard, that's where zombies normally struggle, and this is where Branded comes in and sort of cleans up a little bit, fixes that weakness of zombies. So I wanted to show this one off as well. I know this is primarily sort of branded gameplay, but at the same time it covers a big part and big weakness of the zombie engine, so I wanted to make sure that was well known. Either way, let's get into game number 2. Alrighty, game number 2 here, and you can see a lot more of the zombie presence in the hand here. We're going to summon Alibur just to try and bait out an Ash, but they had nothing, which is good because now we can go for Branded Fusion. Summoning out the Lubellion by sending to the graveyard Ballardrock, which we'll be able to resurrect later on, discarding the Necroworld Banshee so we have a live zombie world whenever we want. Now, we shouldn't have done this, we should have activated the one from hand, but it is what it is. It doesn't make a massive difference in this particular game. And then we set 1 pass, so we have the Mirror Jade branded in red set up, and we have the Ballardrock in the graveyard. The only difficulty is Alibur is still on the field, which means we don't have a live target for branded in red right now. But our opponent doesn't really do very much, and this is where things get a little bit out of hand. So I was looking at the back row, I was a little bit worried about it, I didn't want to sort of challenge it outright, so we decide we're going to summon Unizombie, discard 1 card to boost its level by 1, so we can synchro summon into Chaos Ruler the Chaotic Magical Dragon, which is going to mill 5 from the top of our deck basically, but allow us to choose a dark or light monster among the cards that we pick up to summon to our field, or add to our hand, sorry. We pick up Effect Veiler, now we're going to go branded in red, add back Alibur, to summon out the Guardian Chimera. The idea was we're going to take out at least one of these back rows so we're not as intimidated when pushing for a game here, otherwise we would have just gone for lethal. The back row card we pop is Waking the Dragon. That's a problem, because now they get to summon anything they want from their extra deck, so out comes the Infinitrack Fortress Megaclops, which has really earned its place in the metagame, to be honest, instead of decks like not only Waking the Dragon, but also with the Numerons. So this is a card that we're seeing an awful lot, and a card that you need to be ready to counter. Our opponent just set 5, pass. Mega Clop set 5, pass. That is a turn if ever I've seen one. So our opponent's going to go Call by the Grave to stop our Ballardrock. Like I said, that's a big weakness of the deck, but luckily we had that Crossout Designator ready to go, so we're going to negate the Call by the Grave so we keep our Ballardrock, which is nice. Still have 4 more set cards to worry about though, so we're going to need to see what exactly our opponent's playing before we can generate a strategy to beat them. Aliber, the Jester of Despia, comes out, and at this point they're going to go for Dinomorphia Domain, having their life points to fusion summon a Dinomorphia monster by using their deck as material. So out comes Kentragina. We grab Branded Opening here from our deck, just because it's something to add. We go Verte Anaconda. We sort of are trying to weigh our opponent up here. We're trying to figure out at which point they're going to try and stop us. So we're going to go, Ballardrock is going to negate the effect of the Kentragina. We're going to leave it on the field, because like I said, we can't get any damage over the Mega Clop, so we sort of want to inflict some damage via battle against the Kentragina. We're going to go Verte Anaconda, attempt to change the Mega Clops to Dark. We were just baiting him into activating something to see if he had it, rather than us commit to the fusion effect and then not be able to do anything. We're going to summon Ad Libitum off of our Branded Opening here, triggering our Tragedy to grab an Aliber. Ad Libitum is going to boost up all of our monsters by 100 multiplied by their level, but they have the Ferret Flames set. Ferret Flames is busted. If your opponent has more, the total attack of all your opponent's monsters is higher than yours, they have to send monsters from their field back into the deck so that their monsters basically no longer have as much as yours. So we had to send everything except our Verte Anaconda, which is rough, but we sort of saw something like that coming, which is why we didn't use the fusion effect yet. We go Super Poly, but again, Super Poly's effect still isn't able to affect the Infinitrack Mega Fortress, Infinitrack Fortress Mega Clops, because it's still coming off of the effect of a monster. So unfortunately, that doesn't do us a ton of favors. We summon out our Dragon Necro, Neversoul Dragon, but it's not really going to be enough here. They're going to swing in with the Mega Clops, then they're going to swing with Lilith for an additional 1000 damage. Because this doesn't have an original level, our Mega Clops, even if it was an Exceed monster, can't do anything. They're just going to set Ferret Flames and basically set a bunch of cards and pass. This is rough. We have virtually nothing we can do here. We summon out Aliber. Aliber grabs Branded Fusion. We activate the Branded Fusion just to see what we still have access to. We're going to summon out Titaniclad, the Ash Dragon, which still doesn't have enough attack points to beat his monster. It does put the Ballardrock in the graveyard, but because we take 2000 damage now off of Gravedigger's Trap Hole, we now don't have enough life points to survive his attack into Aliber. So unfortunately, that is the game here. We're going to summon Ballardrock, but that's it. The idea was that we would still have had enough life points to survive the attack into Aliber, and then hopefully sort of generate some sort of strategy, wait until we draw into an Imperm, and then take care of it that way. With both of our Super Polys in the graveyard, that did limit our options for removal quite heavily, which is unfortunate, but you know, sometimes that's just going to happen when you snipe Waking the Dragon. It's just life sometimes, unfortunately. But yes, very fun game, honestly. It was a wee bit back and forth, at least at the beginning, and then it sort of went downhill for us. I don't think many decks would have been able to cope very well with that, but either way, we're going to get into game number 3. Alrighty, getting into game 3 now. So, bit of a slow opening hand, but we do have plenty of interruption at the very least. So it's not the worst thing in the world, and we have our Banshee hopefully here to set up for next turn. Our opponent's got that Numeron Wall, so we may be dealing with a second Mega Clops here eventually. We're gonna go Max C to try and stop to try and draw as much as we can off the special summons. We know it's not going to be much, but we can use every card we can get our hands on. He's going to summon out his 4 gates, swing in. We're going to negate the number 1 here because that's going to prevent his attack boosting, and because we no longer control a monster, that means no more. It means that we're no longer at danger of being killed this turn. He's going to do 3,000 points of damage because he can't boost up his attack points anymore, and then he's going to have to pass it back to us after, of course, he summons out the Infinitrack Mega Fortress. I know that's not its name, we're just going to roll with it. So, pass it back to us. We have the Branded Fusion, we have Super Poly, branded in red, Imperm. We have tons of ways to get rid of this Mega Clops this time, so we are in a much better position. Our opponent does have the Max C, which is unfortunate, but we don't plan on special summoning a ton this turn. We are going to summon out our Lubellion by sending the Ballardrock to the graveyard. so we're setting ourselves up quite nicely. We send Fallen of Albaz to use this card's effect. They're going to try and imperm us. We're going to solve two problems at one with our Super Poly here. Infinite Impermanence would have done the same job, but I sort of wanted to keep that for his gates on the following turn. We're going to summon out our Never Soul Dragon. Infinite Permanence won't have a target anymore to resolve, so we're going to summon out Mirror Jade. Now we have an on-demand banish whenever we want. Swing directly here for 6,000 points of damage. Not quite lethal, unfortunately, but we're still in a very decent position. Potentially Infinite Impermanence would have generated a lethal play, but it is what it is. We're going to summon out Ballardrock here from the graveyard, and we're going to get tributed for Lava Golem, but wait. We're going to get tributed for Lava Golem. So double Lava Golem from our opponent here, and they're going to reduce its attack points by half, so that they're basically aiming to use it to get into lethal this turn. That was their big play. Going to summon out their gates once again. Unfortunately, they didn't account for our set card being another Infinite Impermanence, meaning our opponent's first gate, no boost, no protection, leaving him just short of lethal damage here. So he's able to get rid of it. 500 damage there, and then 4,000 damage to the face. That leaves us on 500. So we haven't lost yet, but our opponent's summoning out the Chaos Gate Sunya. Sunya basically means that if it gets to his turn and he's still alive, we lose the game. So we have to win this turn. Luckily, Ash Blossom was just the card we needed. Well, anything with attack points would have worked. Ballardrock comes back out. We summon our Ash Blossom, link off into Vampire Sucker, and then we attack for game. Pretty straightforward. If he had had something like Mirror Force there, that would have been painful, but, you know, that wasn't going to happen. But yes, pretty straightforward, up against the gates, basically, against Numerons. Numerons is definitely very toxic, but they're very predictable at the same time. Their biggest threat is definitely the Megaclops. You have to have an out for it at the minute. Your deck has to have an out. We have Super Poly and Imperm and things like that. So it's not always the easiest thing to get rid of, because none of those cards are really searchable. So potentially adding in a searchable out to the Megaclops may be something to do. But either way, we won the game. Nothing else really to complain about right now, so let's just focus on game number 4. Alrighty, getting into the 4th and final game of the video, we have the Unizombie here, which did set us up in good stead, but unfortunately our opponent having a Gamma is unfortunate. We activate Max C here, which was probably a mistake. In my head, I thought I was going to draw 2. I don't know why I thought that. That was silly. We're only going to draw 1 off of the Gamma because it's simultaneous. Our Unizombie does get destroyed, unfortunately, with no effect. The Unizombie in this instance would have been basically a 1-card setup, because it has the ability to it is 2 effects, basically. 1, boost up its level by discarding a card, and 2, boost up its level by sending a monster from deck to graveyard. So the idea was we discard the Necroworld Banshee, that gives us Zombie World, and then we send from deck to graveyard the Ballardrock or the Glow Up Bloom, which is basically the same thing, it just summons Ballardrock, and we sort of take the game from there. Usually you would send the Glow Up Bloom, banish itself, summon out Ballardrock plus your Unizombie links off into Vampire Sucker, and then Vampire Sucker just helps you draw cards every turn when it comes to resummoning your Ballardrock. So it's as simple as that. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. Our opponent's got the branded opening here, going to summon out Alibur from their deck. Alibur's going to add Branded Fusion to their hand, so again, we've all seen this combo a million and one times. Branded Fusion brings out Lebellion. Our opponent here is going to play it slightly differently though. They want to go for game this turn, so they're going to use their Lebellion here, as well as their Tragedy. Tragedy's going to search their deck for the another copy of Alibur. I guess they're not playing Dramaturge, which is whatever. They're going to shuffle back Driver and their Albaz to summon out Albion the Branded Dragon, which makes their second Gamma live, but also assists them in going for lethal. In order to stop them from going into the Mirror Jade play here, we're going to banish the Fallen of Albaz from their graveyard. We know the other one is in deck, and we doubt they're playing 3. But that basically forces them to go into Dragostapelia instead, which, while not great for us, at least means we're not going to die this turn, because if we didn't do that, he would have summoned out Mirror Jade, then the ad libitum effect potentially would have allowed him to recycle something else. Ultimately, it would have been bad. So we're going to we draw in the Branded Fusion of our own here. We're going to use the Branded Fusion, summon out Titaniclad. Why that we go Titaniclad? Because on the turn it's summoned, it is unaffected by monsters, by the activated effects of monsters from the extra deck. If we had summoned out anything else, Dragostapelia would have simply negated it, and Dragostapelia is too big for any of our monsters to get over. So we needed to go in the Titaniclad, which is unaffected and it's bigger than the Dragostapelia. Take it out, inflict 1000 damage. Banshee takes out the Aliber, and then we have the Banshee able to go into Zombie World as well. We still have Balladrock in the grave too. This sets us up fantastically, except our opponent has Called by the Grave. That hurts. That hurts big time because we really had a massive play to go into. We were so confident about this game. You know, in this circumstance, our Balladrock would be able to negate, would be able to banish. No more Branded Fusion for our opponent. Exactly, here we go. Verte Anaconda coming on out. Verte Anaconda, pay 2000, send Super Poly, fuse 2 monsters together for the Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, and that is enough damage for game. If our opponent didn't have that Call by the Grave, this would have been a very different game. I would be very, very confident in saying there was a significant possibility of us winning that game if our Balladrock was able to come out. But that's life. What are you going to do? Yes, that's game number 2 against Branded Despia. Very, very close game. We were definitely on the fence there. Call by the Grave tipped the scales in our opponent's favors, unfortunately, but that's just something you're going to have to live with on occasion. Let's get into the deck profile. Alrighty, so looking at deck profile, first of all, do I think that this is a finished article? Do I think that this deck has been completely perfected and it needs to be played like this? Absolutely not. I think there is a lot of room for movement, not only in regards to personal preference in terms of what you would prefer to play, but also in terms of optimization. I feel like there is something else and more that can be done to this deck to make it more powerful. This is the final version of the deck I ended up settling on. Something you may want to consider adding, maybe some Exceed rank 8 to help deal with Megaclops and stuff like that, but let's not deal with hypotheticals, let's deal with what we currently have. First of all, hand traps and other forms of interruption. So we've got that double Effect Veiler, we've got the double Max C, double Ash Blossom, we've got the double Call by the Grave, the Cross-Eyed Designator, and double Infinite Impermanence. Some people would lump Super Poly into that category. I think if you're playing the Zombie World, especially in a deck that attempts to turbo it out so quickly, this is core. You do not play Zombie World in a turbo sort of Zombie World deck without playing Super Poly. It's just too strong. Not only does it allow you typical access to a lot of your Fallen of Albaz monsters against the branded matchup, or even in the mirror with your own branded, it also lets you fusion summon any 2 zombies together to summon out Neversoul Dragon, so it's a huge way to out very difficult powerful monsters and to summon out one of your own basically. 3k beater has a pretty interesting effect, but it's not all that powerful of an effect. Its main thing is its materials are completely generic in the circumstance of having a Zombie World on the field, and it's got 3000 attack points. So pretty sick. That's pretty much why this card is core to this deck. So let's get in and actually start breaking down what we're looking at. So in terms of the branded sort of Despia stuff, we've got the typical package. We're playing triple Aliber, of course. Why wouldn't you? Just searches out your branded cards. Pretty straightforward. We've got a single Despian Tragedy. Initially, I was playing this at 3, and the reason being it has fantastic synergy with Unizombie. Unizombies effects, the discarding of a card and sending of a card to increase its level. So it discards a card to boost the level up by 1 and then sends a monster from deck to graveyard to boost its level by another 1. And the sending of the monsters from the hand and from the deck to the graveyard are considered, they are not cost, they're actual effect, which means that they will trigger the Despian Tragedy search, which is really, really cool. So initially I was playing 3 of it, I was also playing 3 Glow Up Bloom for the exact same reason. But I ended up settling on just 1. I feel like it's fine if we need to send it to the deck from the deck to the graveyard off of Unizombie. Great, although most of the time it's going to be sent through other means or used in other ways. I was simply bricking on it too much for me to continue using it at 3. But yes, Aliber 3, Tragedy at 1 I think is sufficient, and then the Ad Libitum at 1 I think is sufficient as well. This card doesn't see as much use in this particular version of it compared to the pure Despia version, because that's the objective, is to use this card to recycle your Mirror Jade. In this deck it's more of a bonus. If you can get it done, go for it, which isn't exactly uncommon, but it's not going to happen every game. And then you've got your double Albaz just for its name. Triple Branded Fusion, of course. Why wouldn't you fusion someone using your deck as material into one of your Albaz monsters, almost always your Lobelion. Pretty nuts. It's just that simple. Branded Lost, which protects your fusion card. So if you activate a card that would fusion summon, the activation of that effect cannot be negated. Bear in mind, the effect itself still can, so they can still stop your branded fusion with the likes of Ash Blossom and whatever. But its main perk is being able to basically stop them from targeting your Lebellion with infinite permanence, effective heal, or things like that, because it also means that whenever you fusion summon a card, while this is face up, your opponent cannot respond to that fusion summon with any card effects. So if you do it right, it makes your Lebellion immune essentially to the likes of infinite impermanence and veiler, things like that. So that's the main thing. It also, of course, stops the Gamma from affecting your Lebellion too, stuff like that. So it adds a bit of protection to the core strategy. We've got Branded Opening, discard a card to summon a Despia monster from the deck. Considering you have tons of cards, most of your deck would rather be in the graveyard than in the hand. So this is sort of twofold in its purpose. It summons out Aliber, which will essentially be able to search your deck for any of your branded spell or trap cards, usually your branded fusion. So it searches your branded fusion essentially, but it also means you can put your Banshee into the graveyard, put your Tragedy, your Glow Up Bloom, your Doom King, put any of these cards into the graveyard so they can then be used later on. And then lastly, of course, the famous Branded in Red. Reviving a Despia or Albaz card to your hand and then allowing you to fusion summon as a quick play effect, normally into the Chimera, is pretty damn powerful. So this card is, of course, key. You can play this at 2, honestly, you can get away with 2 of that. I think it's a very, very strong card. I only think it's necessary to keep it at 1. You wouldn't play the deck without it. You can play it at 2. I think 1 is fine for now because it can be recycled off of Tragedy anyway. So it is what it is. That's the branded package. In terms of the zombie package, we of course have Unizombie, which is one of the core cards. Discard a card to boost its levels, send from deck to graveyard to boost its levels, so it just gets your whole deck going by putting loads of monsters into your graveyard. It can also be used for some synchro summoning, which is why we've got these guys, but that's not core, that's not really why he's here. It's mainly just to fill your graveyard up. You have Glow Up Bloom. Glow Up Bloom will, while you have Zombie World face up, if this card's sent to the graveyard, will summon Ballardrock straight from your deck. So Glow Up Bloom is very straightforward. Again, we had 3 copies of it initially to tune with your Unizombie a little bit better, but we were just bricking on it. We didn't want to see it all the time, and we only have a single Ballardrock, so after Ballardrock has already been put into play, Glow Up Bloom kind of loses its purpose. I was very tempted to cut this card completely, but having it there for hands in which you don't get access to your branded cards is pretty good. But you're almost always going to have access to branded fusion, so because you're running what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 copies essentially of the branded fusion. So yeah, you're almost always going to have the Ballardrock already in the graveyard. But Glow Up Bloom, of course, it's still pretty cool. I would still play it at least at 1. The Banshee searches Zombie World, simple as that. Quick play, banish itself from the field or grave, activate Zombie World straight from the deck, and because you're activating it straight from the deck, it can't get Ash Blossomed, which is pretty nice. But apart from that, that's all it's here for, to be sent to the graveyard off of many different effects, and then just to be banished for Zombie World. Ballardrock, which is your main man. Basically, so long as Zombie World is face up, he's got double interruption. 1, he can negate the activation of a monster effect, and 2, he can banish a monster from the field or graveyard when the effect of a zombie is activated. So 2 negates in 1, really powerful card, and he comes back to the field every single standby phase so long as you still control Zombie World. Absolutely busted. Definitely one of the most powerful cards in the deck. It's one of the more powerful cards in the game, in my opinion, in the right circumstances. It's not invincible by any means, but it's definitely really powerful. Then in terms of, yeah, and then you've got Zombie World itself, which of course turns everything on the field and in the graveyards into zombies. And from there, it's basically just additional cards that help the deck function. You've got the Foolish Burial to help get any of your key cards and pieces into the grave. Terraforming as an additional search for Zombie World, although that's again not even strictly necessary because you always have access to it. You even may want to replace this with a third Zombie World if you have it. I only have 2. I would probably just replace this with a third Zombie World. And lastly then, the 1-for-1, just being able to spam out one of your 2 level 1s as an additional sort of extender, as well as putting a monster from your hand into the graveyard can be kind of cool. Again, definitely not necessary because they don't have any effects on summon or anything like that. Glow Up Bloom is the more common target for that particular thing because you'll usually be able to discard your Banshee for it, but that's here and there. And that's the whole main deck. Again, tons of synergy between the two archetypes. I think honestly this deck is going somewhere. I don't know if it's there yet. I don't think I've quite worked it out or cracked the code on it just yet, but there is a ton of potential here. Getting into the extra deck, we have our two main super poly targets. We have the Dragon Necro Neversoul Dragon, basically here because it's a 3k beater summoned off of 2 zombies. You have your Dragostapelia, which is a very common card. I've started summoning this card a lot more. Honestly, sometimes you'll summon this instead of your Mirror Jade off of Lebellion, but most of the time you'll summon Mirror Jade. But it's also a very good super poly target. So a fusion monster and a dark monster. Basically, it has a face-up, target a monster in the field, and negate it quick play effect. So it's basically almost like a Veiler built in, and it's continuous as well. So it's not negated until the end of the turn. It places a counter on them, and so long as they have that counter, they're negated. So it can continually stack negates on the board. Titaniclad is here as a big beater. So again, initially I put him here just as material to be sent from the graveyard off of Mirror Jade, but having him here, honestly, being able to have an unaffected 3700 beater from sending your Ballardrock to the graveyard off of, as well as your Albaz, boosts him out to 3700, and on the turn he's summoned, he's unaffected by things summoned from the extra deck. Having this guy around has won matches more often than I'd like to admit, so Titaniclad is definitely pretty damn important. Albion is here almost entirely to be sent to the graveyard off of Mirror Jade, because at the end of the turn after it's been sent to the grave, you will set your Branded in Red straight from your deck. Mirror Jade, of course, being the main boss monster, send one of your other Albaz fusions to the graveyard from your extra deck and then banish a card as a quick play effect, and you can use that effect once every 2 turns. If it's sent to the graveyard by your opponent's card, nuke their board at the end of that turn. So pretty damn powerful. Lebellion is your main engine. When summoned, discard a card and shuffle back from your field, banish, pile, and graveyard back into the deck to fusion summon again. So this is your sort of primary engine. You'll usually summon this guy by sending Albaz and Ballardrock from your deck to the graveyard, which meets the conditions. Sometimes Glow Up Bloom, but this sort of gets in the way a little bit because it locks you in zombies. But the Ballardrock is usually your target. And once Ballardrock is in play, it stays in play. So not only are you summoning your Mirror Jade, you're also getting in play a very, very powerful monster. There are some other decent targets. If you already have access to your Ballardrock, it can send your Banshee, which means that, again, it's basically a searchable. So it turns Branded Fusion into a way to search for Zombie World, which is pretty nuts. But yes, tons of synergy there, especially around Lebellion, and with it discarding a card for it, normally you'll be able to discard a very key piece to your combo. Lebellion's amazing. Chimera, here to be summoned off of your Branded in Red, primarily. It basically will, for every monster, so you need 3 different monsters, at least one needs to be on the field, and at least one needs to be in the hand. So for every monster on the field you use, you destroy an opponent's card. For every monster in your hand that you use, you'll draw a card. Simple as that. If you have Poly in your graveyard, it's untargetable. We don't play Poly, so it's fine. So in general, it's just a quick play pop and draw a bunch of cards. The 3 synchro monsters, these can be whatever you want. The key thing is just their levels. So we've got the Moonlight Dragon here. Basically, the idea is you're using Unizombie as well as one of your other level 4s you can spam out to the board quite easily to summon one of these guys out, and he can modulate his own level, meaning you can essentially choose which of the 3 you want to summon. So if you want to summon out a level 7 by not boosting his level at all, you will summon out the Moonlight Dragon, which will on summon bounce a card back to their hand, and every time they summon a level 5 or higher once per turn, you get to bounce another special summon monster back to their hand. So it's a pretty decent interruption to put up. You've got the, if you want to go level 8 after boosting his level by 1, you can summon out the Chaos Ruler, which will mill the top 5 cards of your deck and allow you to add a light or a dark monster among them to your hand. Good way to search for effect failure and to put your other key cards into the graveyard. And if you want to boost his level twice up to a level 5 and tune him with a level 4, you'll summon out the Shen Shen. So Shen Shen acts as a sort of pseudo floodgate, and anything that would be sent from the field to the graveyard is banished instead. So this does stop dead some strategies just right off the bat. So this is definitely a very interesting card. You may not want to go into this too often because it does kind of sort of play against you as well. Or you may want to replace it with another level 9 entirely, maybe the Vermilion Dragon mech or something like that. That is entirely up to you guys. There's a few powerful level 9s. This would probably be my next favorite if you wanted to take Shin Shin out. It just basically gives you banish a tuner from the graveyard to pop a card. You get the banisher, glow up bloom, and your Unizombie and stuff. So again, that's up to you, whatever level 9 you want to run, or you can just not run one. It's up to you too. Lastly, we have Linkuriboh, which is here specifically just to put glow up bloom into the graveyard in a pinch. If you really need to be able to put this into the graveyard to trigger the summon for your Ballardrock, that's the only reason it's here. Vampire Sucker is a decent link too. This card is here off to basically be used alongside your Unizombie. If your Unizombie is the only play you have, and you have at least one card in your hand or on your field that you want to discard to grab your zombie world, that's where this guy comes in. So if you have Unizombie and either Glow Up Bloom or the Banshee, what you'll do is you'll use its effect to discard one of them to boost its level, and you'll use its effect to send the other from deck to graveyard, and basically you'll get your zombie world and you'll summon your Ballardrock, which means you'll now control Unizombie and Ballardrock. Unizombie plus Ballardrock summons out your Vampire Sucker. Vampire Sucker has an effect where every time something is summoned from the graveyard once per turn, you get to draw an additional card. So that means every single turn, so long as this is face up, because your Ballardrock is continually coming back to the field, you just get to draw an extra card per turn, which is nice. It's not core, it's not essential or anything like that, but whenever you don't have a branded play to go into, it's definitely a nice little bit of card advantage you can generate. And lastly, of course, Vert Anaconda, because you're playing Branded Fusion, you're playing Super Poly, you want access to those cards on demand, especially Super Poly, and Predaplant Vert Anaconda gives you just that. Simple as that. But yes, that is the full deck. Appreciate I've been rambling on a little bit here about it. There's a lot of synergy here. I feel like there's a lot of potential that I haven't tapped into yet, so that's why I'm throwing it at you guys. You guys are the real experts. So if there's any sort of changes, anything in there that you want to sort of see, or you have any ideas, throw them at me in the comments. I'll try my best to implement them for the next time we do this, because I do plan on covering this again sometime soon, once I've had a little bit more time to practice with it. But yes, that is the full deck. Feel free to subscribe if you like what you're seeing. Like I said, helps me, doesn't cost you anything, why not? And I'll see you on the next one.